Close your eyes for a moment and imagine this scene. You're standing in front of a mirror, not the kind that reflects your face, but one that reflects your life. You see all the books you've read, all the meditations you've done, the journals filled with affirmations, the vision boards lovingly crafted. On the surface, you're doing everything right. You're showing up, you're trying, and yet something doesn't move. The reflection doesn't change. The life you dream of still feels like a painting behind glass, visible but untouchable. There's a silent kind of exhaustion that comes from this place, a heaviness that whispers, "Why isn't it working?" You've followed the steps. You've visualized, you've affirmed, you've felt moments of hope, even joy, but the reality around you keeps echoing the same struggles, the same loneliness, the same financial weight, the same health patterns, the same unanswered longing. And somewhere deep within, a subtle doubt begins to grow. Maybe I'm the problem. Maybe something in me is just unchangeable. But what if I told you, with softness and with science, that the problem isn't you, not your effort, not your discipline, not your sincerity. The issue lies in a kind of illusion, a biological illusion that convinces your mind it's evolving, while your cells remain loyal to the past. According to Bruce Lipton, 95% of who we are, our habits, emotional reactions, patterns, is governed not by our conscious choices, but by unconscious programs stored in our cellular memory. This means that even as you think new thoughts, your body might still be living in the frequency of the old ones. Even as you say, "I am healing," your biology may still be vibrating with the chemistry of pain, of lack, of fear. Joe Dispenza speaks of this dissonance too. He teaches that momentary awareness, even the excitement of a new idea, is not enough to create deep transformation. Because your electromagnetic field isn't shaped by thoughts alone. It's shaped by the emotions you've rehearsed again and again, often unknowingly. Thinking differently for 10 minutes cannot overwrite a body that's been emotionally trained for 10 years to expect disappointment. It's like your conscious mind is the captain of a ship, giving new directions. We're going somewhere better now, somewhere freer, more loving, more aligned. But your subconscious is the crew, and that crew has been following an old map for decades. They don't change course because the captain speaks louder. They change course when the entire vessel begins to feel that a new destination is safe. So you can meditate, you can journal, you can visualize. But if you don't also update the emotional programs living in your cells, the silent fears, the unprocessed grief, the inherited beliefs, then your biology will keep steering toward what it knows, even if what it knows is pain. Trying to manifest without this alignment is like painting over rust. It looks new, it feels like hope, but eventually, the corrosion resurfaces. The pattern returns, and you're left wondering, again, why isn't my life changing? But the real question might be this: what part of me is still living as if nothing has changed at all? This video is not about what you're doing wrong consciously. It's about what your biology is repeating unconsciously. And once you see that, truly see it, you can begin the real work of change. Not from force, but from coherence. There's a silent agreement many of us carry, an invisible contract. Never signed, but deeply binding. It says, "Better the pain I know than the change I can't control." And though it's buried far beneath our conscious choices, it runs our lives with quiet precision. This contract isn't made with logic. It's written in the language of the nervous system, sealed by the repetition of emotional chemistry. Bruce Lipton explains that our cells can become addicted to the emotional states we experience most often. Fear, sadness, guilt. When felt repeatedly, these emotions become biochemically familiar, and what is familiar becomes safe. Not safe in the way joy is safe. Safe in the way a well-worn path is safe, even if it leads through a storm. Your subconscious doesn't measure safety by happiness. It measures it by predictability. So even if pain hurts, if it's known, if it's rehearsed, it feels less threatening than the vast, unknowable space of true change. This is how we begin to mistake suffering for stability. We decorate the walls of our inner prison. We rationalize staying small. We tell ourselves that at least we understand this struggle. At least we've survived it before. And somewhere in that narrative, we begin to choose it. Not because we want to suffer, but because the unknown feels unbearable. But underneath that choice is a question the body is always asking. What if the new reality isn't safe? What if I can't handle it? What if I open to love and lose it again? What if I heal and then fall apart once more? So even as your conscious mind dreams of expansion, of freedom, love, abundance, your cells might still be clinging to old emotional contracts, and your subconscious, loyal to those agreements, will continue to manifest circumstances that match them. Lipton's insight helps us understand the comfort zone is not a place, it's a neurochemical pattern, and if that pattern is built on struggle, your biology will return to it like a home. even as your spirit tries to outgrow it. There's no blame in this, only tenderness, only awareness, because recognizing this invisible contract is the first quiet moment of liberation. And maybe that's the most honest question we can ask ourselves today. Am I truly manifesting from freedom, or am I still maintaining a life built to protect my old wounds? In the next breath, we will explore why positive thinking alone often falls short, and what's really needed to rewrite the story written in your cells. There's a moment in every spiritual journey where enthusiasm begins to fade. The affirmations once said with conviction now echo without resonance. The visualizations feel hollow, like images on a screen disconnected from the electricity of belief. And you wonder, quietly and painfully, why doesn't this feel real anymore? This is the myth so many well-intentioned souls fall into, the idea that repeating a new thought is enough to transform a life. But Bruce Lipton reminds us of something essential. Energy comes first, matter follows. The words we say only become powerful when they're charged with coherent emotion. Without that energy, the words are just sound, empty vibrations that never reach the subconscious. Positive thinking, when divorced from emotional integration, becomes a performance. It's like rehearsing a role without ever stepping into character. You might say, I am abundant every morning. But if your body still tenses at the sight of a bill, if your heart still contracts with fear when you think of the future, then the affirmation stays at the surface. The blueprint underneath remains untouched. This is where many give up, not because they're weak, but because they were never shown how to bridge the mind and the body. They were taught to speak the words, but not to feel them into being. Lipton's work reveals that beliefs, true, cellular beliefs, are what shape our reality. And beliefs are not installed through repetition alone. They are installed through felt experience, through emotional congruence, through the slow, lived process of becoming the vibration you seek. So instead of layering new words over old wounds, the deeper invitation is to inhabit those words, to let them live inside your breath, your posture, your heartbeat, to stop trying to convince yourself of a truth you haven't yet emotionally embodied. Imagine standing in a desert and chanting, I am abundant. The words disappear into the dry air. But if you begin digging, feeling the ground, connecting to the source beneath, one day, water flows. That is emotional integration, not speaking about water, bringing it to the surface. So the question isn't, what am I saying to the universe? It's, what frequency am I becoming, beyond the words I say? Next, we'll explore the quiet sabotage of constantly checking if it's working, and how this innocent habit can unconsciously keep you stuck in the vibration of waiting. There's a particular kind of restlessness that takes hold after we've set an intention. We start with clarity, we visualize with feeling, and then we watch, we wait, we monitor, we check our reflection in the mirror of life, again and again, searching for signs. Has it worked yet? Has anything changed? And with each check, a quiet doubt begins to seep in, not loud, not dramatic, but subtle, like a whisper asking, what if nothing's really happening? This is the quantum gap, the space between planting a seed and seeing the sprout. And in this space, most of us unconsciously shift from creation to observation, from emitting to evaluating, from being the cause to chasing the effect. Quantum physics tells us something revolutionary. The act of observation collapses possibility into form, but the kind of observation that matters is not passive watching. It's the vibrational expectation we carry. We don't attract what we want, we attract what we assume to be true. And if our assumption is built on checking, doubting, and waiting, then that is the frequency we reinforce, the frequency of lack. This is the paradox. The more you need to see if it's working, the more you signal that you don't believe it is. And the field, ever responsive, mirrors back the emotion you're broadcasting. Joe Dispenza teaches that we must learn to live as the energy of our desired future before the evidence appears, not to prove anything to the universe, but because that is what aligns the body and mind with a new timeline. We become the creators, not the waiters. Think of it like trying to boil water. If you keep lifting the lid to check, the heat escapes. The transformation slows, not because the method is flawed, but because doubt interrupts the process. This isn't about pretending. It's about trusting. It's about holding the frequency even when nothing has yet arrived to justify it. Because in the unseen, the real shift is already underway. So ask yourself gently, am I living in the energy of what I'm creating, or am I still peeking into the future, hoping for proof I can believe in? In the next breath, we'll explore what it truly means to align thought, feeling, and biology, and why emotional coherence is the missing ingredient in so many manifestation practices. There's a subtle ache that arises when the mind dreams of one life and the body still remembers another. You may think abundance, speak healing, Envision love, but inside your chest, there's tension. In your gut, there's worry. In your breath, there's resistance. And though the mind may reach for the future, the body stays rooted in the past. This is the fracture so many never see, a quiet incoherence between thought and emotion, between what is imagined and what is truly felt. Bruce Lipton reveals that for any lasting transformation to occur, there must be coherence between the brain, the heart, and the behavior of our cells. It's not enough to want. You must feel the wanting as safe. You must allow your biology to become fluent in the language of what you seek. Otherwise, the message gets scrambled. The intention doesn't land. Joe Dispenza deepens this by describing emotion as the charge and thought as the signal. Together, they create the electromagnetic field that shapes reality. If the thought says, "I am ready," but the emotion says, "I'm afraid," the frequency is divided. Static replaces clarity. The field responds with mixed results, not because the desire is wrong, but because the signal is unclear. This is why so many spiritual practices begin with hope and end in quiet disappointment. The person did not fail. The method did not fail. The coherence was missing. But emotional coherence isn't born from willpower. It comes from rehearsal, not mechanical repetition, but felt, lived rehearsal, where the body learns to trust new feelings, not just new thoughts. It's like tending a garden. You don't plant a seed once and then walk away. You return daily. You nurture, you water, you feel the soil, sense the sunlight, speak to the possibility even before it blooms. That is the power of emotional consistency. It feeds the vibrational field until change becomes inevitable. So perhaps the question isn't, am I thinking clearly enough? But rather, what does my body still believe is unsafe to feel? Next, we'll step into one of the deepest saboteurs of transformation, the illusion of control, and how trying to force the outcome often blocks the very miracles you long to receive. There's a particular tension that arises when you want something deeply and fear it may never come. It tightens the chest, it clutches the breath, and quietly it begins to overtake the natural rhythm of your energy. What was once a sacred longing becomes a strategy, a plan, a fixation, and slowly, without realizing, you move from receiving to controlling. Control often wears the mask of responsibility. It says, if I don't do it, it won't happen. It creates schedules, rituals, steps, all in the name of manifestation. But underneath this structure is often an unspoken panic. What if the universe forgets me? What if I'm not aligned enough? What if I fail again? And so, you begin to micromanage the mystery. You try to direct every detail, shape every outcome, squeeze your future through the narrow channel of certainty. But the frequency of control is heavy. It's urgent. It's loud. And that very urgency sends a message to the field. I don't trust this. I'm not safe. I'm not ready to receive. Bruce Lipton and Joe Dispenza both illuminate how stress, particularly the kind born from fear and control, floods the body with cortisol. And cortisol, while useful in danger, becomes a barrier in the unknown. It narrows perception. It shuts down intuition. It anchors us in survival instead of expansion. When you try to force your desires, you contract the space in which miracles can arrive. You become the gardener who tries to pull the flower open before it's ready, not out of cruelty, out of desperation. But the result is always the same. The bud withers. The bloom never comes. There is a quiet wisdom in surrender, not the passive kind, not giving up, but opening, softening, letting go of the timeline, the method, the metrics, and allowing life to meet you with solutions beyond your current imagination. Because some of the most extraordinary shifts happen not when you strive harder, but when you stop interfering, when you allow the rhythm of creation to lead, and your role becomes resonance, not resistance. So the real question is not, am I doing enough? But am I trusting enough to let it happen without needing to control how? In the next breath, we arrive at the heart of the transformation, where true change begins, not in the mind alone, but in the very biology of your being. Let us walk there now. There comes a time when even the most devoted seeker begins to feel worn, a time when you've danced at the edge of transformation so often, it starts to feel like home. Not because you've crossed the threshold, but because you've circled it. You've felt glimpses of freedom, moments of deep clarity, times when everything aligned, if only for a breath. And yet, the full shift, the true embodiment, always seems just out of reach. That is perhaps the most painful place of all. Not the darkness itself, but the twilight, the in-between. The place where you know something more is possible, but your biology hasn't yet caught up. You can sense the new version of yourself so clearly, and still, your reactions belong to the old one. Your emotions default to past patterns. Your nervous system hesitates to believe that safety, joy, and abundance could actually become your new normal. But this is not a failure of will. It's not a sign that something is wrong with you. It is simply the gap between intellectual awakening and biological permission. Bruce Lipton teaches that real change occurs not when you think differently once, or even when you think differently often, but when you feel differently so consistently that your cells begin to believe it, that your body starts to trust it, that your subconscious, which governs 95% of your life, finally says, yes, this is home now. Neville Goddard takes it even further. He reminds us that imagination, true imagination, is not fantasy. It's not escape. It's not dreaming with doubt in the background. It's the felt experience of your desired state. It is emotional rehearsal so vivid, so embodied, that your cells cannot distinguish it from reality. And when the body believes, reality follows. So if your life hasn't changed yet, it may not be because you're not aligned. It may be because your biology is still catching up, because the frequency of your past self still lingers in your nervous system. And that's not a sign to give up. It's an invitation to deepen, to stay present with the practice of becoming, to bring the future into your body again and again, until it no longer feels foreign, but familiar. Your future does not require more effort. It requires resonance. It asks not for more trying, but for a new way of being, because your mind is the artist. But your body, your emotional cellular body, is the canvas, and the masterpiece of your life can only emerge when both work together. So now, perhaps the only question left to ask is this: what if the life you dream of isn't waiting for you to become stronger, but simply to become more coherent, more receptive, more emotionally attuned to what you already are? This is the beginning, not of effort, but of embodiment.